Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Writers Chat. We are so glad you're with us, whether you're here with us right now on Zoom or whether you're watching a replay. I'm Johnny Alexander. I am joined by my precious co-hosts, Melissa Stroh, Brandy Bro, and Norma Poor. I felt like I did a little Gollum impression there, and I did not intend to do this. But anyway, moving on. We are delighted to have another special guest with us, and I'm going to turn it over to Brandy to introduce her.
It is my great pleasure to introduce a woman who has a tremendous heart for people and especially for writers. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Her name is Lori Stanley Roeleveld. She is traditionally published, an award-winning author, professional writers coach, freelancer, editor, speaker, and disturber of hobbits, who enjoys making comfortable Christians late for dinner. She's authored 6 books and contributed to over 10 more. Lori has coached over 100 Christian writers toward their dreams. She speaks her mind at excuse me, LoriRoeleveld.com. We will put that spelling in the chat so you know exactly how. But for you on the replay, it is LoriRoeleveld.com. And she manages her coaching business at TakeHeartCoachingAndFreelance.com. Lori, we are so pleased to have you join us today, and I'm really looking forward to your topic, which is coaching. Coaching, such a wonderful thing. Lori?
Yeah. Oh, thanks for having me. Thanks. This is can you hear me fine? All right.
Yes.
Good. Yeah, so I wanted to come on and talk about what coaching is, because honestly, right now, I see a lot of there are lots, like I think since COVID sort of made us all explode over the internet about doing all kinds of different support businesses for Christian writers there and speakers. There are a lot everywhere you look. There are people doing different businesses for speakers and writers. Part of that was survival. Everybody, during COVID, especially people who solely made their living over in speaking, they really had to find ways to survive. So those things came up, and there are a lot of quality services being offered to people. So that's a wonderful thing. But there's also like a lot of decision making and a lot of confusion that comes up around it. And there are some things to watch out for, because we writers, we want to do well, we want to succeed. And then sometimes even good-hearted people, aren't necessarily the best fit for us at certain times. So, I care about making sure we all have like good information and have a good understanding of how to make decisions about how we spend like our precious dollars in helping us to become, reach our writing goals. So, essentially coaching is not just for writers now. You can see professional like life coaches and Christian development coaches, all kind of coaches. A coach is someone who's essentially they're partnering. It's you partnering with an experienced, proven, vetted professional in your field to optimize your potential in that field. Right. So like they should be experienced at what you do. They should be proven. There should be evidence for what they, that they're experienced, not just them telling you they're experienced, sort of vetted. And they should help you optimize your potential. That's what you're looking for, that they are focused on you as an individual, and they're helping you reach your potential. Generally, they meet with you over the phone, through Zoom, or in person to help you develop a personalized plan to get closer to your writing goals. And, so I'm going to cover today some things like what is not coaching, what are some of the types of coaches that are out there. How do you know when you're ready, or if you could benefit from a coach? Because really, I see a lot of people jumping to them too early, or at times then they're not really ready for a coach. How to find the right coach, what happens in coaching, and then sort of what to watch out for if it's not the right fit, right? So there are a lot of different ways to get help in writing right now. So you can have a mentor. I've had plenty of mentors. There are people who we meet at writing conferences, or we meet in our groups, who say, they're further along than we are, and they love what we're doing and they care for us. So they, there are mentors that most of the time they're volunteer, but there are professional mentors now. Generally, that's close to coaching. So if there's a professional, someone saying they're a professional mentor, I think that Cindy Sproul's does like professional mentoring, and it's pretty much coaching. So like just ask someone, is there a difference between, if they're a professional mentor, say, is there a difference between you and coaching? Most of the times they're going to say no. But mostly we think of mentors as just someone in the field who's helping us along. And there are plenty of people, Christian writers, we're all on the same team, so we do help each other. A coach is not an editor, although they may offer editing services. So I will offer editing to my coaching clients, but it's a whole separate, we keep those things separate, and not every coaching client asks for editing. Some coaches will I do coaching notes within the coaching package. So that would be like looking at 10 pages and giving someone some notes on like, here are some things I think you need to work on. And here are some resources for you to get better at that. Whereas editing would be like actually going through a piece and doing different kinds of edits. A coach isn't an agent, although some agents, do act as coaches. A lot of people get a coach until they have an agent, and then they just stick with their agent. But it's when you're speaking with agents at conferences, it's a good thing to ask, hey, how much career development do you do? Do you get involved with my career? Do you help me? Do you coach me? Some agents don't. Some agents have such a big log of clients, and their focus is to get you published. Their focus is to sell your work, get you in places. So some of them, that's not their forte. And so then you might want to continue with a coach after you have an agent. But a lot of people, just like they get a coach sort of when they're trying to get an agent, and then they, end things with their coach and let their agent's voice sort of take over. But that's an important thing to ask an agent. A coach isn't a teacher or instructor, although coaches certainly do teach and instruct. So you're not necessarily looking for, there are specific coaches that we'll talk about that do specific instruction, but it's not necessarily what is going to happen in your coaching sessions. A consultant, a writing consultant, is more advice oriented, more like someone who comes in and says, I've looked this over, here's what you need to do, go do this. A coach isn't doing that. A coach generally is trying to help you learn to make wise decisions, sort of trying to coach themselves out of a job, in terms of like helping you learn how to see the field and make decisions about your career. Beta readers and sensitivity readers, I'm sure most of you know about that. A coach isn't a beta reader or a sensitivity reader, although if they have, some of them offer those services. Some offer critiques. A coach is also not a ghostwriter or a collaborator, although some offer that. So, I'm not going to write your book with you or for you unless you also hire me to be a collaborator or ghostwriter. So most of ghostwriter would be someone whose name doesn't appear on the book. They do the writing for you. A collaborator would be like Brandy Brow with Lori Roeleveld. That would be like that meant we collaborated. All right. So in the publishing industry, a coach is very much like an athletic coach, right? Like Bill Belichick and the Patriots. It's someone with professional, proven experience, knowledge, broad knowledge of the field, who may have also some additional training and certification, which, I sort of recommend that you get someone that has extra training specifically for coaching, because it's a very specific sort of skill to have. So someone may have that training certification. It's not necessary, but it's helpful. But their focus is to help bring the best out in you and assist you in creating a path toward your specific needs and goals. In the industry, there are different types of coaches. There are author coaches. So an author, someone who's an author coach, would probably be like sort of a full service coach. They're going to help you with your career, with your goals, with your, like sort of everything. I have a client who, like we meet twice a week, once a week. At first was just to help her figure out her priorities. Oh, I've got this book, I'm working on the book, I'm working on my platform, I'm working on this, what I can't figure out what to do next. Right. So we would spend one session just working on organization, on priorities, on determining what her week should look like. And then another session was focused specifically on the writing. Now, like she's making her own decisions about her priorities and stuff. So now we spend one session on the writing, one session on platform building and speaking, and, going over that. So that's, that like I sort of like I do a lot of broad range coaching with people who are, I've got one person who is like, I'm frustrated, I keep blocking myself, I know what to do and I don't do it. Okay, so like we did some work around motivation, around what to do when you lag your motivation, so it's very different kind of coaching. Everybody that I coach has sort of very different needs. So that's an author coach. A book coach would be very specific to, I'm going to help you get through your book. And a lot of publishers will have a book coach. Sometimes you can pay for, I know Redemption Press, you can pay for book coaching. And that would entail sometimes brainstorming about, well, what should this book look like? Especially for nonfiction authors, it can be hard to figure out the structure of a book. Am I writing a devotional? Am I writing something that's got chapters? What should the chapters look like? So there might be a brainstorming component, and then there's coaching through the chapters. How are we going to structure the chapters? What does it look like? How do I do this? Fiction book coaches often work with like, okay, do you have enough tension? Are your characters interesting? Let's coach through how to get through to the end of your book, how to produce a great book. What does it look like? So you could have a book coach, you could have a writing coach who's specific to teach you how to write. I've done this. I had one client who wasn't getting the feel in her blog post that she wanted. And so for 6 months, she only blogged once a month, but for 6 months, she would send me her blog post and I would edit it for what she was a good writer, but she wasn't getting the hits on the blog. So I would edit suggest edits for honing it until like each month, there were fewer and fewer edits. And so after 6 months, it was like, this is great. Like, I wouldn't touch this. And she was like, okay, good. Thank you. I think I'm there, so so some people will do specific writing coaching. So there's a little more instruction in the writing coaching. They may work on a specific issue. Like I would get, I have someone who's going to critique a fiction book that I have. I've been really working on point of view. And if she tells me I still have a point of view problem, I'm going to get specific writing coaching on point of view because I've studied it, I've read it. If I can't get it, I maybe need someone to like hand hold me through point of view. And then there are branding, marketing, platform specific coaches. They're out there. They should definitely have education and proven expertise in that area. You should look for someone who, has some sort of, their credentials are up there, their references are up there. They, like you can see, like, I got branding, marketing coaching from Jim Rubart. Jim had, owned a marketing business before he became an author. So and he's done, very well selling books. So that for me was like, okay, you're proven, you know how to do this. And so, so look for their branding, marketing, platform specific coaches. If you're just not getting that, and that's for me, I was not getting how to market myself. I did not know. I got, response. I always, my book proposals were getting into publishing boards and one after the other. Love the writing, love the project, can't sell it. Market, it's like it took too many for me to be like, okay, maybe I need to figure this out. Maybe I need to understand myself and how to market myself. And then when I learned how to market myself, then my proposals began to be accepted. Right, because then I knew how to do it. All right, sorry, I was looking over at the chat. Anything I need to answer in there?
Some comments, mostly. Did you see any questions so far, Johnny?
I don't think any questions, just yeah, just comments.
You got people thinking about, maybe I need a coach or yeah.
All right. Well, here, now let me tell you how to know if you're ready or if you will benefit from a coach. Because, like let's face it, as a writer, I'm a sucker for anything that comes along that says, oh, that's going to help me move forward. Like I've got, it's going to be $50, it's going to be $100. Okay, fine. I'm putting my money out. And we have to be careful. We have to be, so careful not to just, I have classes, online classes that I've bought that are still sitting there that I don't in any way, shape, or form have time to do. And it was just like my Kindle, like all those books that are sitting in my Kindle that I haven't read, right? So as writers, I'm like, look, be really cautious with this, be careful. I don't hear, honestly, like our field is full of really good, godly people. So I haven't heard any horror stories or anything, but you want to be careful. So first of all, know that any individualized support that isn't volunteer, it's going to be an investment, right? It's going to cost money. So, coaches will put their fees out there. What you have to understand, because some people will say, wow, that's a lot per hour. Like, okay, because you're not looking at the research they might need to do in between sessions, the preparation they do, the follow-up that they do. It's all included in that, so it is an investment. So think about avail yourself of every free and low cost option available to you before you decide, okay, I'm going to invest in a coach, because that's what you're doing. It's going to be an investment. So you're going to do all the things. You're going to read books, blogs, podcasts, newsletters on writing, right? You're going to get everything you can out of those. You're going to take the courses available through Serious Writer, Christian Writers Institute, all those other avenues for doing online courses that are available to you. You're going to join groups like Word Weavers, ACFW, local writing groups that are going to help you be accountable to write and learn the basics. And you're going to attend at least one yearly conference. I always recommend to Christian writers, save up for a conference, budget for a conference every year. You don't have to go every year, but if you budget for a conference every year, then that's your money. You don't go to a conference one year, you invest in a website. You don't go to a conference one year, you invest in a coach, right? So, but first go to conferences, because you want to meet people, you want to network, you want to learn what you can through classes. And that's where you're going to meet people who are potential coaches, and you're going to get a feel for them. You don't want to go into this cold. You want to take someone's class, you want to sit with them, get a critique, do those things and be like, wow, I really resonate with this person. They do seem to like my writing. Oh, look, they do coaching. Well, maybe along the way, I can do this. It's also the place to ask people who are the coaches they recommend. So I want to tell you, in the Christian world, we don't talk about each other, right? We don't say bad things about each other. We're Christians. We really work not to gossip behind closed doors. We work not to put people down or slander. So as a Christian writer, you have to learn to listen for faint praise. Right? So if you say, oh, I've heard this person is coaching, what do you think? You're like, oh, yep, they're a coach. That's understand that, that's the faint praise you need to sort of go with oh, okay, is there a coach you would recommend? And then they may say, okay, I would go to this person, that person. They're just trying to give you a clue without saying anything negative about anybody, or so we just, as Christians, we're really working to be graceful with each other and for each other. So listen for that. But so take all those steps, enter the contest, network, develop your craft. All right. But then if you've taken all those steps and you've applied what you learned, so now you're serious about seeking an agent, and now you got the conference coming up where you're going to do a proposal, you're going to seek an agent. That might be a time for you to get a coach, someone who looks over your material with a professional eye, who can talk the conference over with you, like who's good for you to sit with, who would be a good fit. That might be a good time to get a coach. Or maybe you've taken all those steps. Maybe you've attended conferences for 6 years and you've tried to get an agent or you've tried to get published and it's just not happening. You're also probably a good candidate for a coach, someone to just sit with you and say, let's look this over. Let's look over where you are and figure out if there's a way that things can change. So that might be a time for very individual instruction. Maybe, like you just don't know where to go. You've been listening, you've been sorting through, you've been trying different things, you just don't know where to go. So you're probably a good candidate for a coach too. If you're just starting out and you want just someone to help you lay out a map for your steps, and it's in your budget to have a coach, you certainly don't have to go through all that in order to get a coach. I had a new writer hire me just to get her prepped up for conferences. She never even heard there were conferences. She was like, oh, I need coaching. And I was like, well, have you never been to a writer's conference? You've never been to a workshop? Like, okay, you don't really need coaching. And she was like, but I want it. Like, well, that's fine, but let's just get you prepped for conferences. And then, then we'll come back. And so that was it. We just prepped for conferences. I worked with a handful of my clients this year who've been to conferences for years. And I was like, let's try a different approach this year. Let's work on your mindset. Let's work on your presentation. Let's work on your attitude and your strategy. And let's see if this could be a different conference. And for all 5 of them, it was a game-changing conference. Just having someone to say, let's, like everything from like, how do you present yourself and what you wear, what's your style, to like, let's think about your attitude and what you have. I spent a lot of years as a deficit-minded writer. And the year I turned 60, I was like, I'm so done with this. I want to be an abundance mindset writer. I want to look at what God has given me. I don't want to focus on what I don't have. I want to look at what God has given me and what are my skills and what are my experiences and what do I have to offer. And if you go to a conference with I'll just give you free advice right now, just make a list of your strengths and your experiences and read it every day before you leave the door of your conference room. Go in there. It helps you change your vision of the conference field. You're not looking at all you don't have. You're leaving with like, these are all the things that God gave me. Why am I ignoring them? God gave me all these things. Now I'm going to look at the field, listen to people talk, knowing all that I bring to the table because God gave it to me, not because I'm all that, but because this is what God equipped me with. And it can really change things up for you. So, some coaches offer that. They offer conference prep coaching. Some do more motivational stuff. I tend to work with writers who are struggling. Their motivation comes and goes, or they really have confidence issues. My favorite is to work with older writers. I have a group on Facebook called Elizabeth and Zechariah Writers, for writers of a certain age, writers over 40. And just to encourage us, like we need specific encouragement. And I always tell people, don't say like, am I too old to do this? Say, what do I need to consider to do this at my age? What are my considerations? What do I need to factor in? So those, there are all kinds of different writers. So when you interview with all kinds of different coaches, when you interview with a coach, ask them what their specific passions are. Most coaches can do like 360 coaching, but say, what's your favorite area to coach? What is it that you really like to focus on? And make sure that when you're talking with them that you feel like this is going to be a good fit for you, because it's really a trust relationship, and it's becomes a very pivotal relationship in your world. So you want to make sure you have a good connection with a coach.
Lori, could you
Taking your point, Pat.
could you talk a little bit more about what you mean by having a deficit minded? When you said that, it was like, okay, when you contrasted it with abundance, it made sense. But still, like, are you talking about like going in and like not thinking, like maybe just feeding into your own weaknesses when you go to a conference? Or I don't know
Mhm.
exactly what I'm trying to ask, but just a more in-depth look into that bit.
Yeah, I think my total focus was always what I didn't like. Well, I don't, like when I didn't have any publishing credits. Well, I'm not published anywhere. I don't have any, I have no articles. I have no, I don't have a big contract. I don't have a big publisher. I don't have, like it was always that my platform's not big enough. It was all those things. So I would go to a conference sort of looking, always thinking like, all right, so I don't have all these things, so I've got to go there and sort of get all those things, which is not what happens at a conference. At a
Okay.
conference is where you're building relationships and making connections, and you certainly do want to be strategic about getting some classes in those areas where you need to bolster yourself. But what I tell people is like, try to, it's important to sort of figure out where you are as a writer before you go to a conference. All right, am I close to wanting to, am I close to being published, or have I never been published? And then spend your time, the bulk of your classes should be sort of where you are, and then maybe take 1 or 2 classes for where you want to be. Because if you take too many classes based on where you want to be, you're going to be overwhelmed. You're going to be back crying in your room. I mean, like I think in every conference, even as faculty, I've cried in my room at one point. So that's almost unavoidable. but you don't want to, like you don't want to spend all your time super overwhelmed. You want to go to some places, like take a class that's one of your strengths and bolster your strength and feel good. And like there's a big emotional component that happens during a conference that you need to, if you are aware of it, you can capitalize on it and make the most of a conference. So, like too many writers are like, well, I didn't win a contest. I haven't done this. I haven't done. Okay. Stop telling me that. Tell me what you have done. What do you have? What has God given you? So it's not about self-esteem. It's about not ignoring all that God's given you. Oh, look at all the experiences God has given you. That's material. Look at the material he's given you. Oh, and you're able to write, you're able to make a deadline. That's a strength. That's, like, oh, like this. So you know how to put sentences together, you know how to edit your own work. Like, so some of the writers that I had, rather than sitting down with an agent and say, well, I've had a lot of articles published. That's like 2 seconds of their time, and they go, okay, thank you. If you do a CV, which is like all, a list of all the articles you've had published, where you've got links to them, where you can, any place you've had a devotional published, if you do that and you sit down and say, so this is my resume, my writing resume, and they're like, oh, look at that. Look where you've been published. Look where you've, like, that's more substantive. That gets their attention. That shows that you're a professional, that you respect your own work, and you respect that God has given you experiences that you can bring to the table. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I really like that, because I know like early on going to conferences, just how overwhelming they were, and you don't know what to do, and you're just afraid of doing anything wrong. And so I really appreciate And so then you're just sort of, if you're already an introvert, you're just fading more and more into the shadows, right? So I like when this changes that whole mindset, where you don't have to just feel like, what am I even doing here? To go in with that kind of a different mindset. It's like, no, you belong here, and you're going to learn, and this will be great. So, yeah.
That angst, I don't think that angst of like, do I belong here? Am I right? I don't think that ever goes away. And I think it's part of the job description, is learning to manage that.
Yeah.
Because I was at a conference I was in a workshop with Yvonne Lehman, and a lot of you know Yvonne, she's gone home to the Lord, but she'd written like 50 books when I was sitting in that conference. She started the Blue Ridge Mountain Writers Conference. She was the consummate writer. And in that workshop, we had to write descriptions. And so we're all writing them. And the workshop leader was going around with a microphone, asking people to read theirs. And he got to Yvonne, and Yvonne started to read hers. And then she stopped, and she was like, oh, forget it. I'm not a writer. This is no good. And like, for me, that was a life-changing moment for me. That made me realize, like, this never goes away. This is just part of being a writer. This isn't a clue that I don't belong here. This is actually validation that I do. Like, I have writer's angst. there you go. I'm a writer. So the next time you have that feeling like, oh, I don't belong here. Hey, I'm a writer. That shows I have writer's angst. I must be a writer. So just learning to manage that is important.
I'd like to add that I have encountered people that don't have that angst and they think their work is fantastic and it really needs a lot of work. And so because they think it's fantastic, they don't have that angst to question and seek and make things better. They're not a better writer.
Yeah, Brandy, that's brilliant. That's a brilliant point. Absolutely, absolutely. There are plenty of people who think they're all that and they're not. So, that's all right. So that's what I'm saying. This isn't about going without humility. You go in with humility, but you go in saying, hey, like the Lord called me to this for a reason. I'm going to trust him more than I trust the voice of doubt that I carry around. I'm going to trust his voice and assume I'm here for a reason. And so, all right, so here are the things that he's given me to work with. How do I take this bunch of talent and what do I do with it now? So how do you find the right fit in a coach? So that's where, like it would be hard to come in cold to the Christian writing community and just like, oh, let me just pick out a coach. You kind of just, you can certainly pray and ask the Lord and it can happen that he just finds you the right person. But if you're building these relationships, then you start asking around. You certainly can do a Google search and you'll find plenty out there, but you're going to want to ask for references, even if someone has stellar credentials in publishing success. Because I'll tell you this, coaching is an art. When a coach sits with you, it is about you. And there are writers who they just woke up. I mean, there's a handful of them out there who just woke up, wrote a story. It was brilliant. And they made the New York Times bestseller list. That person is not necessarily able to tell you how to do it because they never had to work at it. They never struggled. They had connections. Boom, they're in there. So the most brilliant, most highly successful published writers are not necessarily the best coaches. So they could have that skill, but that's not necessarily the pathway to being a good coach. Yeah, Brandy.
Do you think that conversely, somebody that perhaps maybe does not have as much writing credentials could be an excellent coach?
Yes. That's why you want to go to their classes because, if someone's a good teacher, if you leave their class going, man, I learned so much, maybe they're not the keynote that's there. But if you learn stuff that you can apply, then that's a good indication that here's a person who not only, they probably, because some people have tons of articles published and they just haven't gotten a book, but they have skills for writing that are incredible. And they know the business, they understand the field, they're comfortable in themselves, so they'll focus on you. Whereas if you're in a workshop and you learn mostly like someone has really cool stories, there are people who are really fascinating, excellent stories, but you not necessarily taking something out that you could apply for yourself because they're like, oh yeah, I just knew this person and I got this and I got like, okay, how am I supposed to apply that? I don't know that person. I don't, so there's nothing wrong with them. It's just that they're not necessarily maybe a coach. Does that make sense? So you want to try it out. You want to listen to people, get to know coaches at conferences and workshops, take a class. Most coaches offer some sort of classes. I do classes, I do group coaching. Some people do group coaching because it makes it more affordable for people. And it's a good way to test the waters is to do some group coaching. And that's just essentially like our group coaching is that, we keep it really small, like maybe 5 people. And everybody gets assignments. And then most writers have very similar questions and problems when they're at a certain point in writing. So everybody can learn from hearing everybody else's questions and struggles. So that can be a nice way to do it. You want to ask, most coaches offer a free consult. Remember that you're interviewing them. It's hard to, it's hard for you to realize that, because you're just hoping, like, oh, I hope that they like me, but you're really thinking like, do I like this person? Are they listening to me? Are they asking me questions? Coaching is a lot about asking the right questions. It's not about, for most of the time, it's not the coach saying, here, do this, 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 this. That's more consulting or instruction. Coaching is like, wow, have you considered this? Well, here are some options that you can choose. Like, what of those options feels right to you and why? And, like the coaches, and it's not that coaches don't ever weigh in with their opinion, but it should be mostly about helping you see the field and you come up with you come up with answers that fit you specifically. Because you can go to a conference and get information, and you can get it there a lot cheaper than hiring a coach. So a coach is bringing out the optimizing your skills. You can ask for references. You can ask what progress their clients have made from working with them. Sign up for 1 or 2 sessions before committing to more. I generally do writing packages. You'll see different authors. Some coaches will just say it's, $150 an hour for my fee, boom, for my coaching. That's what it is. Others will offer packages. I do the packages because it gives the writer an easy, like, okay, if they're like, oh, I thought I wanted to do coaching, but now after 3 sessions, I'm out. They don't have to break up with me, right? It's not awkward. They can be like, oh, I'm not going to do another session. Like, that's fine. It's also so I can break up with them, honestly, if they're not doing the work. If they're, if they're coming week after week and they're like, oh, I didn't really get to what we talked about, then, at the end of a package, I may say, usually I'm pretty straightforward with them, like about like, you need to do the work, but I could also say like, what, like, let's take a break, because why don't you just do the work that we talked about in these sessions and then come back. So having little packages like that, look for, when you first get with a coach, look for the opportunity. Do I have an easy exit ramp if I need it? But hopefully you find a good fit. And it's perfectly fine for you to say to a coach, I'm just not feeling like we're a good fit. I'm probably going to go somewhere else. That's fine. That's how this works. There are people that I've coached. I'm like, I don't know that we're a good fit. And coaches should tell you, if a coach, I mentored someone for a conference, and he's just got potential coming out of his ears, and just like an amazing writer, but he's going to do fiction. That's not my, like, I have written fiction and I've won contests in fiction, but I haven't been multi-published in fiction. And this guy had like this gold idea. And so like at the conference, the agents were seeing it, editors were seeing it. So I was like, let me connect you with a coach. And he was like, you don't want me as a client? Like, oh, I would love you as a client, but like, don't you want to be with this multi-published fiction author who coaches? And he's like, I don't know, like, it's going to be fine. Like a coach should be looking for your best interest, right? So, like if you're with someone and you sense it's wrong and they're not like saying anything, that's a confirmation that it's not, you're not with the right coach. So they should be, we all, like, and the person I brought them to knew exactly, like, oh no, that makes sense for me to coach them. Absolutely. We do that with each other. Like, we'll call each other up and say, I have a client I think is like, they're going to benefit from you more, so I'm going to send them your way. People have done that to me too. So, we should be for each other.
Lori,
Yes.
You said it, but didn't point it out. And I kind of just like to put this out on the recording, so people that watch this, they can catch this. But the important thing is, if we're going to seek a coach, we need to be in a place in our life where we are able to do the work that a coach is going to assign. And we need to be willing to do the work and actually do it. So it's too common, I think, for some people to want to seek a coach and go seek a coach and then not recognize that they're either not going to do the work or they really don't have the time to do the work. So it's important not to waste your time and the coach's time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love the question that Leslie's asking, because I've always been on a like 0 budget. Like, that's always, people are like, oh, what's your budget for this? 0. What can I get for 0? Like, that's always. So like, honestly, when I got coaching from Jim Rubar, I said, look, dude, like, what do you charge? And he told me, I was like, I can't do that. Is there some way, what can we work out? Can I, because we're self-employed people. Like if someone said to me like, look, I see your beginning coaching package is this amount. Would you take this to like to start with? Because I can't, I'd probably be like, sure. What's going on with you? What do you need? And if we were a good fit, I'd be like, yeah, if I've got enough clients at this, then I can say yes to someone who's in need because I understand what that's like. I absolutely understand. So I have like a customized package that's honestly for people that I'm like, look, if you can't afford that, then let's just talk. Let's talk and maybe we can work out because we're like, I tie the portion of my coaching because of that, like I feel like that's important to, like in terms of giving back because people have given to me and we're all on the same team. If your work is something the Lord wants out there, then I want to be part of that. And most coaches will do that. Most coaches, I'm not like a big exception. There are plenty of Christian coaches who, if you said, hey, this is what I can give you. I can give you $20 a session. And, like maybe we could just meet for half an hour and I don't have to meet with you all the time or whatever, but like, what can we do? They would probably say like, don't worry about that. Let's work this out and work out something with you. But, so don't let finances stand in the way. If you feel like, no, this is all me except the money part. Okay. So talk to someone and find out what they can do. Right. If you're friends with a coach and you just keep calling them up and asking for free advice, you need to like check yourself. That's on the flip side of it. If like Jim Rubart and I are buddies, but I'm very cautious. Like if, I haven't been back to him for a while, but when I started doing my own business, I was like, hey, I need a session because I could have picked his brain, but that's like, I was like, yeah, it's a matter of respect. I was like, dude, let me hire you for a session to talk about what it's like to run a business. I want you to look at my business plan and tell me if I'm, on target with it. So that's there. Some book publishers offer book coaching or coaching through their publishing company. Just ask questions. Ask them, what do I do if I don't like my coach? If we're not a good fit, can I come back to the project manager and ask for a different one? Ask them, the coach that I've been assigned, how long have they, what are their skills? How long have they been coaching? That kind of thing. So you want to ask questions. You don't want to just blindly, you don't want to have someone that you're working with as a book coach and they're you feel like they're writing out your voice and you're kind of new, so you're not sure. You want to check that with somebody. Like, so if you're in you're with a publishing agent company, you can go to like the project manager or an editor and say, hey, like, I'm not sure about this advice that I'm getting. Can I just check it with you? And, because a lot of publishing companies use freelance. And so it might be someone who's new that's not necessarily, doing, who doesn't necessarily understand coaching and they are sort of getting rid of your voice, but it could just be like you're new and you don't understand they're not getting rid of your voice. So you want to check that stuff, but you don't want to stay with a coach that you're not feeling like that you're walking away from sessions with value. That's what it should be. It should be, I just want to get onto that before we run out of time. So what happens in coaching? So you want to, like, another thing to watch out for is people who are always trying to upsell you. They're very worried about like making sure that you sign up again. Of course we want people to stay on, but like that shouldn't be the topic of a session. That shouldn't be, taking up time in your sessions that you pay for. They should be cautious with your time, respectful of your time. There shouldn't be a lot of storytelling on their part during your coaching sessions. That's a sign that like they should not be talking the most during your session. You should be talking the most. So you should be in charge of your coaching. You should call the shots. You should be clear about your goals for coaching, and together you and your coach should work out what measurable success is going to look like for you. So you have to be realistic about coaching. A coach isn't, like, I don't say like, I guarantee you'll get published after my coaching. Like, I can't even guarantee that I'll get published, right? Nobody can do that. So you have to have, your coach should have realistic help you set realistic expectations, but you should also talk about what are the measurable goals that are going to come out of this. What are the measurable results? For some people, success is obtaining an agent. I can't guarantee that you'll obtain an agent, but I will say, like I'll say, like, we'll produce a product that an agent will respect. And, like a proposal that an agent, will have all the elements. It'll be respectable, and an agent will take you seriously. But you can't, like, I don't know what the market's going to want at any given point. Are you going to improve your write? Some people do it to improve their writing. Some want to win a contest. Some people want to get published, like in articles. Like, okay, let's talk about that. Let's, like, set up your goals. One of the writers that I coach for a conference, she just took off after the conference. She's doing so much freelance. Now our coaching is about how to manage her freelance work and how to stay on top of it, how not to go crazy. And that was just from a time in May where she went to the conference. A great sign of a good coach is when they send a getting to know you assessment before the first coaching session. So that because they respect them, that you're not going to spend money for the first session, them just asking you basic questions about yourself. That's a good sign. Each session should have a goal or goals. So I've had coaching with Jim Rubart over marketing and running a business, Jane Rubietta. I did some sessions on expanding my speaking business. Before each one, I would send them an email saying, here are the topics that I'd like us to cover for our next session. We would do our session, cover those. They would generally send me a follow-up email saying, here's what we covered, here's some extra resources, here's some more ideas, here's what I think you need, some questions I want you to think about for next time. So there was this, there was always this, it's not just that one session, it's the prep for it, because you're spending money for that. A coach should ask you how you learn best, how you like to. Some of my clients, I will edit 5 of their pages, and then they take the next 5 pages and they try to learn from that, and then we go over it during a session. So some people like to do that, get it before the session, and process anything that I've said without me looking at them, because they're like, look, I get mad at you and I cry or whatever, but that you turn out to be right. So they don't like to do it during the session. Other people like, no, I want to do this fast, so we do it during a session. Okay, let's go through this page. Here's this, here's this, here's this. They like doing it right hands-on during a session, so they can say, why would I do it that way? Why would I do that way? But it's important to figure out how people learn. I will tell someone, look, we'll try it that way, but if you realize you don't like that way, tell me again. Because I've had people go, oh, I thought I could take it if you did that, but I can't. So can we do it that other option that you offered? Absolutely. So it should be, they should ask you how you learn best. They should follow up with you. Let me see, I'm looking at our time because I want to take any questions. But again, just like Brandy said, you must do the work or coaching won't work. Nobody has magic, right? Like nobody has different coaches will give you different coaching advice. Just like when you're at a conference and someone will say, oh, you got to get rid of that first page, and someone will be like, wow, that first page is gold. Okay, so a coach won't necessarily break the tie. What you do is you come back from a conference to your coach and say, well, this person said this and this person said that. As a coach, I say, well, let's think about those people. Like, what is their experience? Whose opinion are you going to weight more? Like, if they tend up being the same, then you go, okay, so now they're equal weights. Whose opinion feels like where you want to go? Like, what's your gut telling you? Because you have to live with your decision, not me. Like, so what decision do you want to live with, and why? Let's talk about why, and let's work those confidence things out. So that's what a coach will do, is help you process feedback, help you process, like, here, why am I choosing this, so that you know the whys. In any healthy coaching relationship, it should be a lot of challenging questions that make you think, help you stretch. Some are nicer than others. There are coaches that are a lot nicer than I am. I'm in Rhode Island, so Bill Belichick is my, my coaching idol for the Patriots. And not that he's not nice, but he's pretty serious, because I feel like I will say to people like, hey, like sometimes I've said to a couple of people, you're paying me a lot of money. Do you want me to tell you just what you want to hear? I will do that, but you're paying me money for that. And they'll be like, no, like, okay. So here I want to tell you what my best opinion, but you can take it or leave it. Just like an editor will come in and they're giving you their professional opinion, but you still have to own your choice. You still I'm going to take their professional opinion here, or I'm going to reject it because my gut's telling me this is a better choice for me. That's writing for grown-ups in Christian writing. So, yeah, so I've covered a lot. You might want to coach. The last thing I'll say is you might want to coach in emergencies or life changes. Like I had a book release and I had a lot of writing, a lot of speaking engagements, and there was like a major life crisis that just absolutely gutted me. And I was like, how do I do this? How do I go through all these interviews and these speaking engagements with, like my soul is on fire. And so I called Karen Porter, who's an amazing speaker. And I was just like, look, I need speaking like for, higher ups. I don't know how to do this. And she spent 2 hours working with me on, like things to say, how to work, how to tell people a short story of what was happening with me without getting into details or making my drama part of their event. And, just gave me some clues about how to manage myself. I have a speaking engagements coming up that's on a bigger stage than I've ever been on. Again, I called Karen, like, Karen, I need a coaching session. I don't know how to do, like giant screens and a big auditorium. Tell me what I don't know. So it's the same thing with writers. You've got a book deadline and you've had a trauma. Like you can call a coach and say, I don't know how to do this. My book is due in 2 months and I've been, and I'm really traumatized. What do I do? How do I get through this? So that's another reason to get a coach on board to sort of help you for fancy stuff.
All right. Well, if you want to come back on, please do. We did have one question that I think you answered, but I will read it in case you just there was anything else that you wanted to add. Leslie asked, what is the best way to find coaching if starting out and don't have the finances to invest? Should you just continue to write and look for help through researching? And again, you did touch on that, but is there anything else specific you'd want to say to Leslie?
Yeah, like I said, like you can, honestly, Cease Murphy, some of like he's done all kinds of, like he does, what do you call it? Scholarships for conferences. He also, like, he just has a heart for writers. And so you could, Twyla Belk, Cease is retired from most of his stuff, but Twyla Belk has his same heart. She was his assistant for years. You could reach out to someone like Twyla, you could reach out to me and just say, hey, I need sort of coaching level help, but I can't afford it at all. Who could I reach out to? And they, any of us would talk to you about like, what is it that you need? And then, we would just like reach out to someone and say, hey, can you take this person on and help them? So, like we all talk about each other in good ways. That's one thing, we don't talk about each other in bad ways, but we do talk about each other in good ways. We say like, hey, like I'll tell my agent, hey, have you noticed that writer over there? Because I did her critique and you're going to want to talk to her. Like we do that. We do positive talking with each other.
I wonder too sometimes if getting someone who's just starting out, because every coach has to start out sometime, and you do run the risk that they're not experienced, maybe, but if you're it might be a way to help someone start their business, and they're not going to charge as much because they're looking for clients and trying to get their foot.
Yeah, absolutely. ASA certifies coaches. They have a great coaching program that really goes into, my background psychology and biblical studies, and I've spent a lot of years working with families in crisis doing coaching. And I took ASA's certification course, and it was great. It was a really, super foundation for, so they just certified a bunch of new coaches, and, they can go to asa.com, I think it is. And they put pictures up of like, oh, here are all the new coaches that just got certified, and then they'll be in their directory. So,
Wow. That's a great resource. Great.
Mhm.
Anybody have any questions for Lori while we're still recording, or comments? Yeah, Catherine.
What was that link you just gave?
It's AWSA. It's the Advanced Writers and Speakers Association. I think it's asa.com, but it might not be. I don't have my,
Is it?
but it's the Advanced
Yes,
Writers
that's
and
it.
Speakers
That's it.
Association. Okay, all right. And so they have a coach directory. And like I said, it's a very rigorous program that they put coaches through. It's a lot about exactly what I was talking about, not presenting solutions, but offering, asking a lot of questions about, so it's run by, like I had Cynthia Kavanaugh, she does in college level coaching instruction. And she, so it's a great, they do a great course. We have to practice a lot. We have to practice on live people and get their feedback. And so they do a good job with it. It's a lot of studying, a lot of reading.
That sounds like a great thing too, that if you're, to find someone who is certified in a program like that. I didn't even realize that existed. So yeah.
Yeah. That's why, like, honestly, if like when you hear a published writer and they're speaking or teaching and they talk about having struggled on the way up, that's like, oh, okay. Like, that might be your coach, because, like I just knew how to read, like from a really young age, I just knew how to read. So when I was homeschooling my dyslexic son, I didn't know how to break reading apart necessarily to help him learn how to read. I had to learn how to break it apart. Same thing in this field. So if there's someone who's like struggled, they had to learn how to break it into pieces, and so they can help you, right? Like, okay, here's the code, I learned it, like, so not the people who super sailed through don't have tons to offer too. There might be someone who just has the gift of coaching, but generally you earn the gift of coaching through working your way through.
Anyone else have
And
any?
you have to have a heart for other people. Sorry.
Yes, no, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Anyone? If not, okay, Norma, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about next week.
Okay. This time I don't have the deer in the headlights look. I know what I'm talking about. Anyway, next I'm going to be talking about how to create or establish a writing retreat, a small gathering for writers, whether it's in your home, if you want to make it like a stay retreat or just a one-day retreat. And our guest will be Chaplain Heidi White. She's part of the Word Weavers group that I'm a part of. And she's hosted a few writing retreats in her home, and she's going to share how she went about doing that and how easy it really is to do. So if you've ever thought about doing a writer's retreat, come check it out. Hear what she has to say. I think you'll be encouraged and blessed.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And Lori, thank you. I think this is the first time we've ever done this topic, and it was very, very beneficial and helpful to see what.
Oh, good.
Yeah, just all the different ways coaches can help. And it's like short term, long term. I mean, it just seems like there's anything someone might need help with, there's a way to get that help. So appreciate that so very much. If you're watching the replay, we do invite you to join us live any Tuesday morning. We start at about 11 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Central, and so forth around the world. And you can also check out all of our episodes on our Writers Chat Facebook page and join our Writers Chat Facebook members group. So thanks, everybody, and stick around for the after party, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.